All right. Let's see. How are we doing today? It's my first time trying to do live on YouTube. So doing it as like a vertical stream to see how this works, because apparently it's like shows up in the shorts feed. So I'm just testing it, but we'll do a quick ask me anything. Hey, what's going on? Hi, good morning. Good morning to you. It's like 4 p.m. here, but good morning wherever you're at. How's it going, buddy? It's going pretty well. How are you doing? And how's the like quality of stuff look? I've done these a lot on TikTok, but I've never done it on YouTube before, so I don't know if I like set stuff up well. Is 43 years old for a software developer? I don't know. It's kind of subjective, right? If you mean just like objectively, are most software engineers older or younger than that? I mean, most are going to be younger than that, but that's not like something to say like, oh, if you're older than this age, you can't be a software engineer. It's just, it's a young field and therefore there's more young people in it, right? Like if you're like 60 right now and you went to college at 18, computer science probably wasn't even an option, or at least not something that was likely on your radar. Are Udemy courses decent enough to learn software development? It depends what you mean by learn software development. Like, are you going to use only Udemy courses and become a software engineer at Google in like 6 months? Probably not. Like the odds of doing that, very slim. Can you use Udemy courses to build up skills, to learn how to build websites and apps and things like that? Absolutely. But I wouldn't see it as like a pure piece of education by itself, but rather like a way to supplement learning. I wouldn't see it though as necessarily like a full, complete way to learn, although maybe that's something that's possible. Well, I wanted to ask you if you could make a tutorial about Java, how to learn it. I mean, I'm not going to make like tutorials on Java, the language. Like, frankly, I don't know Java that well. If you mean like how to learn it, I don't think it's very different than learning any other programming language. Like, I don't know of anything like unique to Java of like, oh, you must learn this to learn Java. So yeah, I don't know that I'd like have enough content to say about that, especially like Java specifically, because I don't know Java that well. Let's see. Is it necessary for one to be DevOps engineer, or QE can also get into DevOps? Is it necessary for one to be DevOps engineer, or a QE can also get into DevOps? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I also don't frankly know all that much about DevOps or QE, so I'm probably not the right person to answer that question anyways. When I apply for a job on Facebook, they don't even look at my CV. What should we do in this situation? I don't know how you know if they looked at it or not. Like they don't really like give you feedback on why you didn't hear back. But I'm not sure there's that much you can do about it. If you can get a referral, that's a way to 100% guarantee it is looked at by a human. But beyond that, like there's not much you can do except for applying for more jobs elsewhere, applying to different jobs at the company, improving your resume, stuff like that. Does the company hire a DevOps engineer, or do they make full stack engineer do DevOps related stuff? It depends on the company. Lots of companies have DevOps specific engineers, but there are some companies that don't have DevOps as like a job. Why do you prefer front end instead of back end development? So just for me personally, I like the sort of tangibility of it. I like the fact that I can like see the things I built and point to the things I built. I also like the more like cross-functional collaboration that there is in front-end development, because you're sort of like this bridge between the engineering team and the design team, and you get to work on design stuff at the same time as working on engineering stuff, which I always found pretty fun. I'm not like a particularly good designer, but I enjoy design a lot, and it allows me to sort of do a little bit of that. Let's see. I'll be interviewing for a front-end role soon. I was told that one of my interviews will be on backend. Do you have any idea of what sort of stuff I should be learning for the backend stuff? I'm not sure. I've never had somebody tell me I'm going to have like a backend interview, so I don't even honestly know what that entails. Like, do they mean a data structures and algorithms interview, in which case study like AlgoExpert, LeetCode type stuff? Or do they mean like they're going to quiz you on like Node.js or something? So I would ask for clarification on what exactly it is that they're trying to interview you on. Do you have any Udemy course for data structures and algorithms? No, I don't have any Udemy courses. I've never made a course on Udemy. And I don't like have ones to recommend. I've bought a few like over the years, but there's nothing that I'd be like confident in recommending, honestly. Is it necessary to have a portfolio and have projects to get my first job? It depends on where you're coming from. If you have a bachelor's degree in computer science, no, it's not necessary. It helps, but it's not necessary. If you're self-teaching, or even if you're coming from a boot camp, it's probably going to be necessary, just because you need something to sort of like showcase some proficiency, and projects are a good way to do that. Hey Connor, thanks for all of the awesome videos. I get your front end, but did all the ML hype make you think to make a transition into that field? It's super interesting, or it's super tempting to switch for me personally. No, so I think ML is cool, but no, I've never really had any like temptation to switch into that field just because it's like popular at this moment. Yeah, no, personally, I think it's interesting. I'll be a customer, I'll be a user, but as far as like going to do ML work, it's like actually not that interesting to me personally. I took some classes on ML in college and I expected to like them a lot. And then I realized they're just sort of math classes and I did not particularly enjoy them. I have a very specific question. Business analytics, web dev, full stack front end, back end, or iOS dev, which one to choose, or easier to learn and most in-demand job market? So there's sort of like different areas of this. My like honest answer is just choose the thing that you're most interested in. Choose what's like actually exciting to you. I wouldn't choose between like areas of software development just based on where the like slightly higher paying jobs are. But to answer your question, if you actually care about it, I don't know much about business analytics, so I can't really answer that. It's pretty different than the other ones. Like objectively, on average, full stack and back end developers make a little more than front end developers, but that doesn't mean you can't make a ton of money as a front end developer. And a lot of that data is just skewed from the fact that a lot of people start with front end development and sort of transition over time. And it's also what boot camps teach. So just on average, less experience in most front end development. So once you account for that, the difference in pay is pretty negligible. And then easier to learn. I don't know. It depends on what you're good at. I think on average, a lot of people will say front end development's easier to learn than back end, but I honestly don't think that's true. I think it's kind of the other way around. I would personally say I think iOS development is objectively harder to learn, but some people would probably disagree with that. So it just depends on the individual. And the job market, I don't know. There'll always be demand for like full stack front and back end developers. I don't know about iOS. I'm sure there's demand for it, but I don't know enough. I don't know enough about iOS development to like confidently tell you how much demand there is or pay or anything like that. Is work from home still a norm in IT, or is it back to working from the office? It depends on the company. There's some companies that are like completely remote now. There's others that are like partially remote where you can work from home 2-3 days a week. And then there's some companies that are like, no, come to the office. You need to be here. So it just depends where you're working. Angular, React. I mean, I like React a lot more, but like use whatever the tool is that's going to be best for the job in your case. Do you think AI is going to replace developers? No, not anytime soon. There was a study done recently at, I think it was at Princeton, but don't quote me on that, where they gave GPT and one of the other models a bunch of actual GitHub issues. So instead of giving it like coding interview questions or whatever like generic tasks we usually give it to test, they gave it actual GitHub issues, so real software engineering work. And it was able to solve basically none of them. I think it was like 4% or something. And it even says like in the paper, the ones that did solve were extremely trivial. So it's not like, oh, it was at least able to do like this one thing in software engineering well. It was like across the board, it could not do software engineering. Now, does that mean it's never going to get better? No, but I think we're just much, much further away from that point than most people think. Yeah, so I don't see it happening anytime soon. Why did you choose to study informatics at university instead of computer science or software engineering? So software engineering wasn't a major at my university. If it was, I probably would have chosen it. Informatics versus computer science, frankly, info was a lot easier. So there's that. But also, I didn't really like all of the like theoretical math stuff you have to do in computer science. Whereas for info, I didn't have to do that, and I could just focus my time on practical skills. Like ultimately, I am not that interested in the theory of how computers work or any of that stuff. Like I'm just interested in building stuff, and that's what we did in info. Do you think AI will replace developers? I just talked about that. Favorite sports team? Spurs fan. Go Spurs. My university degree is valued only in my country. How do I get my first job? I don't know if I understand the question. I don't understand. I don't really understand what you're asking. Can you teach me? Probably not. Best way to get a job in the industry with zero experience: work on projects, do things to make your resume showcase, even if it's not experience working for somebody else, experience doing the thing, right? Experience of, hey, look at me, I can build stuff. So work on projects, make your resume the best thing you've ever made in your life, and play the numbers game a bit, apply to as many jobs as possible. Any advice for open source contributions? Do you recommend it? I recommend it if it's interesting to you. I recommend it if you want to do it. I don't recommend it as like a time to check all the boxes of software engineering so that I've done all of the things that are going to help me on my resume or whatever. If that's your goal, don't do it. It's a waste of your time. And it's frankly going to be a waste of the time of the people who are actually managing those repositories or trying to contribute to. But if you're contributing to open source because you actually enjoy it and you want to be contributing, that's great. I'm not somebody who's contributed to open source a lot, but what I'll say is, as a general rule, I wouldn't like look for ways to contribute to open source. I would use open source, find problems with it, legitimately like recognize, oh, this thing isn't doing what I'd expect it to, and then go make those contributions, right? It's not so much about contributing to open source as much as it is being a legitimate part of that open source community. And when you do that, you'll find ways to contribute naturally. But also a lot of open source repositories do have sort of like starter tasks you can do where they're intentionally very easy tasks to do as like a first task. Top goal for 2024? I don't know. I have no idea, honestly. Any recommendations on what to do while applying and waiting to hear back? Study for coding interviews, apply to more places, work on projects. I don't know. Depends on your individual situation, I guess. People usually specify metrics or quantifiable data on their resume to show their impact. What sorts of metrics can front-end developers write on their resume? You can show things like increase in like performance, loading time. You can show metrics around increased user satisfaction. You can show metrics around increased like usability of things, right? So if you have metrics that objectively show that something is now easier to use than it was before, stuff like that. Why do Wimby's teammates hate him? I don't think that's true. What do you think of Western Governors University for computer science degree? Have you seen someone getting employed with no experience in that degree? I mean, I don't know anybody with that degree, so I don't know. I can't really answer that. I just completed C++ level 1, and now I'm taking data structures, and I'm struggling. How do I get better? I don't like have like specific advice for you beyond Just keep practicing at it. The more you do something, the more natural the more natural it'll become over time. And try learning from different sources, right? If you're having trouble learning, it could possibly be that wherever you're learning from, just like that teaching style doesn't mesh well with how you learn. So that's something to consider too. Can you talk about how interviews work? Yeah, so usually tech interviews, it depends a little bit on where you're interviewing. So like if you're interviewing at big tech companies, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, etc., the way it'll work is usually there'll be a phone screen. Sometimes before that, there will be some like online coding challenge to do. Then there'll be a phone screen where they'll ask you over the phone on like a Zoom call some coding interview question to solve some data structures and algorithms question. If you pass that, then there'll usually be a round of interviews in person. Usually there's like 5 or so interviews. Sometimes one of those will be behavioral. So they're just asking you like questions about your life and your experience and stuff like that. And the others will be coding interviews, just like the phone screen, but in person, either on a computer there or like on a whiteboard. And then if you're more senior, they'll also ask you system design questions. So it'll usually be on a whiteboard and it'll be high level questions like how would you design Facebook newsfeed? And they're not asking you to write any code. They're asking you to talk about what databases you'll be using, where you'll need load balancers and stuff like that. How you'll actually like design the system from a high level. If you went back in time, what major minor combo would you choose as an undergrad? I mean, I think the best major to choose is computer science if you want to be in software, or computer engineering if you are potentially interested in hardware. But I think computer science is just easier than computer engineering and unlocks most of the same doors. How do I get my first job? I don't have a university degree. I mean, it's hard for me to like answer that specific to you, but work on your resume, make it the best document you've ever made in your life, get a lot of feedback on it, get critical feedback on it, and then study for coding interviews a ton and apply to as many jobs as you can. They don't pass Wemby the ball enough? I don't know about that. I feel like Wemby's got the ball a lot. Have you heard of WGU? Yeah, I've heard of it. I just don't actually know anything about it. I feel like I've seen like TV commercials for it or something. Java or C++ for AI? I don't know. I don't really do AI. But it probably depends on what exactly you're doing. I'm working as a procurement analyst with a BS in math degree. I'm taking Colt Steele course from Udemy. Should I be eligible of software engineering, software developer role? I don't know. I don't honestly know what that means you do now. And I don't know what you mean by be eligible. Like anybody can apply. Whether or not you can get the job depends on how good your resume is and how good you are at the coding interviews and if you actually have the skill set. So I don't know. I can't really answer that. Going for a boot camp is good enough to land a decent paying job. How challenging can it be for somebody who wants to start from scratch in a boot camp? I mean, is it possible? Yes. Is it difficult? Also, yes. One thing I don't like about boot camps a lot is that they sort of sell the dream where they'll talk about how they had this one grad who got a job at Google in 6 months. And those people exist, right? Like I know some of those people, but there's also a lot of people who go to a coding boot camp and it takes them a year to find their first job. And a lot of that depends on what coding boot camp you're going to. It depends on what other experience you have. And it depends on the market that you're actually applying to jobs in, right? Like, so one, just where in the world are you? But then also like, what time is it, right? It was a lot easier to get a job out of a coding boot camp 3 years ago, just like it was a lot easier to get a job from anywhere 3 years ago. So a lot of these boot camps sell the fact that 3 years ago, all of their devs were getting jobs straight out of the boot camp when in reality, that's not happening anymore. Or a lot of them sell like, we had a 99% employment rate, but when you go search for those boot camp grads on LinkedIn, almost all of them just work for the boot camp company. So it's like, well, that's not a real job, right? Like it's a job, but it's not like you getting a job placement in the industry. You're just getting a job for the people who taught you. So a lot of that happens. But like, is it possible to get a job out of a boot camp? Absolutely. Just don't think it's going to be go to boot camp, immediately have job afterwards, because that's not how it works for most people. Okay. What would be your advice for an 18-year-old studying computer science at an online university? After getting the degrees, getting internships the first step? What do you think? Yeah, I mean, try to get internships, not even necessarily after you get the degree. Try to do internships during the degree. And if you can't get any, work on a lot of projects, build up your resume, stuff like that. Would it be better to do AP Computer Science and AP Math? Better than what? Do you have to go to a top-level university in India to have a chance to get a job in the US? No. I mean, I don't know. I can't really answer questions about India because I've never been a student in India. How much experience is needed to get a good job? It depends on your definition of good and how you define experience. I don't know. And how much luck we're allowing to play into this. Because is it possible to get a job directly out of university, coming from the worst university in the country and having no internships and no projects? Sure, it's possible, but is it likely? No. So it's not about what is the minimum to do. It's just the more stuff you do, the easier you make it on yourself. Is it hard to make all this stuff with keeping track to not leak any data or do some privacy issues? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to answer that. When you work at big companies, they kind of make it very, very difficult to make mistakes like that. There's so many protections in place at big tech companies from making big data mistakes. So at big companies, I'd say no, it's not that hard. And even when you're working at a startup, oftentimes they're using tooling that makes it very difficult to make those kinds of mistakes. I think it's much harder to make that kind of mistake now than it was 5 or 10 years ago, because the tooling has matured a lot. What language should I learn first if I want to be a software engineer in the future? I'm 14 years old. I mean, if you're 14, my advice would be just do stuff that's interesting to you, and don't worry too much about trying to build employable skills now, right? You have a long time to go before that point. So just find something that's interesting to you and work on that. If you're interested in game development, go learn Unity and C# or something. If you want to make an iPhone app, go learn Swift or learn JavaScript and React Native or something like that, or Flutter. It doesn't really matter what the language is. Most of the skills are translatable or transferable to other types of development. Just do whatever's interesting to you. Is hiring picking back up? My LinkedIn inbox has been dry for about a year, and just within the past week, 3 recruiters reached out to me: StubHub, Spotify, LinkedIn. Hey, that's awesome. Congrats on that. Yeah, I do think it is a little bit, partially just the market recovering and also the new year. A lot of companies in January are setting all of their hiring headcount quotas and all that. So January, February, a lot of companies start reaching out to people more. So I think it's a mixture of that and hopefully a little bit of recovery. What data structures and algorithms should I focus on for front-end interviews? I mean, the same stuff as any interviews. There's nothing unique to front-end for data structures and algorithms. Just in addition to data structures and algorithms, you'll also need to know front-end stuff. Is it too late to learn JavaScript while AI is going fast-paced? No, not at all. Can you get your own private office? Do you have a cubicle, open plan, or other office types? I mean, it depends on where you're working. Right now I work from home, so this is my office. I guess it's a private office. At Facebook, for example, it was an open floor plan. I know Microsoft, I think, has actual offices. I don't know of many cubicle companies in tech, but I'm sure they exist. Boot camps definitely sell you a dream. I graduated from Coding Dojo boot camp and haven't landed my first role since 2022. Yeah, I mean, that's the unfortunate reality. And you also probably graduated at one of the worst times, going right into the sort of downturn in the market. I guess maybe a little bit before it, but yeah, it's unfortunate, but they do kind of sell a dream. Best way to make money from coding outside of a traditional 9-to-5? Would you recommend freelancing? Yeah, I have a whole video on this on from a couple months ago on how I would make money coding. It's just what's interesting to you. You can try freelancing. either like in your local community, like literally go into like restaurants and stuff and be like, hey, can I build you a website or an app? Or you could try it on like Upwork or Fiverr or something like that, or trying to build up your own client list through your own website. And there's other things you can do. You could try building your own apps and selling them on the App Store. You could try building like VR apps or whatever is interesting to you. So there's lots of ways to make money coding. What'd you consider when leaving Facebook for AlgoExpert? For me, well, that's not what I meant to click on. For me, I liked working at Facebook. I also, though, recognize it's not where I wanted to be for like the rest of my career. And I think it's important every now and then to sort of look around and see if there's people around you who are doing the things that you'd want to be doing in like 5 years. And I saw that that would definitely exist at AlgoExpert, and I didn't know that it necessarily existed at Facebook for me. Yeah. And also, like, frankly, it was just a good financial decision. Based on the companies and places you've worked, what is the thing that makes the company hire people? Is it where the degree comes from? What do you think? Like your degree and stuff on your resume can help you get an interview. And then after that, getting hired is just about passing coding interviews. What is the code equivalent of being able to dunk? That's a good question. I don't know. Currently in 10th grade, in about 3 to 4 months, and I was wondering if it would be better to take up AP Computer Science and AP Math instead of just normal computer science, and was wondering what language is usually talked about in computer science. Better take... Yeah, obviously AP gives you college credit, so like I would say if you have the option to take AP Computer Science, like I would probably do it. As far as what languages are usually talked about in computer science, I don't know what you mean by talked about, but if you mean like what languages are used like at universities to teach computer science, it depends a lot on the university. Like I went to the University of Washington. Most of our like intro classes were in Java. And then beyond that, it kind of just depended on the class and what they were trying to teach. But some schools use Python for all their intro classes. Some schools use C++. Some use C#. Just depends on the school. Do you think that becoming competent at algorithmic design is necessary to be a good engineer, or are things abstract enough to the point where it's better to focus on learning frameworks, other tools? It depends on what you're trying to like do. But no, I don't think like algorithms is all that important to being good at the job. It's important to getting the job, unfortunately, but as far as being good at it, I don't think it's that important. Microsoft is mostly open these days, is it? I know I've seen people in like day in the life at Microsoft videos on YouTube have like these big offices, and I've been very jealous. Did you apply for the home office tax credit this year? Of course, of course. Is it too late to get a summer 2024 software engineering internship? Too late, not necessarily, but it's well past the point that most people are getting them. So it's going to be difficult, but it's possible. Is it too late to learn coding beside my career? I'm not a software engineer. I don't know what your career is. Like, I don't have any context in your life, but I don't think it's ever too late to learn a new skill. So no, I guess not. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I don't know. Hopefully making YouTube videos. I'll probably start a company at some point. We'll see. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Because lately I've been feeling kind of unmotivated. I've been studying for months, but I still get overshadowed by my peers and people that half the work I put in. I think you'd be surprised how high of a percentage of people feel the exact same way. Yeah, I don't know what more to say than that, but I don't feel like you are unique in that feeling. It's a pretty common one. You ever meet Zuck? Was the culture at Facebook different than that of Lyft? No, I never met Zuck. Yeah, the culture, they both have like that big tech Silicon Valley culture, but I will say the culture is very different. Facebook's culture is very much about moving fast and shipping things as quickly as possible. And as you ship things as quickly as possible, like getting as much customer feedback as possible and quickly pivoting on what doesn't work and doubling down on what does work. Whereas it felt like Lyft moved a little bit slower at times and a little bit more like methodically. But I was only an intern at Lyft, so I might have not had like the full experience of Lyft engineering. Any ideas for resume projects for a front end developer? I have a video that's like about like what projects to make, but the TLDR of it is just like do stuff that's interesting to you. Whatever you're most interested in is the thing that you're going to be most passionate about to actually build. It's the thing that when you are in an interview, you're going to be able to talk the most passionately about because you actually cared about it. And I think it just ends up with the best result in most cases. But if you're like, I'm not passionate about anything, I just want to build a project, I would say find like a project that's in some tutorial and find a way to meaningfully change it, like very meaningfully, to the point where like it is unnoticeably related to that tutorial. But I think that's a good way to like get a starting point. Like find a tutorial that does like one thing and do something that's very similar to it, but in like a completely different niche, if that makes sense. But really the like specific project itself, I don't think matters that much. Your review of Colt Steel and Angela on full stack developer course on Udemy. Didn't somebody ask this earlier, or did you already ask this? I haven't like magically gone through every Udemy course. So I have no idea. I don't even know who those people are. How important is it to just know the answer to questions versus being able to talk through a problem with the interviewer and explain how you would try to solve them if you don't know it immediately? It's much more important to be a good communicator and be able to articulate your thought process and to have good like critical thinking and problem solving skills than it is to just have solutions memorized. One story I like to tell is my first Facebook phone screen. I literally got the question wrong. Like my code did not work. And the interviewer told me he thought it was a great interview. Obviously, I got the job. So yeah. And that was because I did a good job of like articulating my thought process. Is HackerRank or similar worth it? I mean, coding interview prep, I think is worth it. I don't know much about HackerRank specifically. Should I focus some studying time on an AWS practitioner certification or go for system design while I'm still trying to break into tech? I'm trying to add more value to my resume and to my skills. So it might depend a little bit on where you're based, but in the United States, at least, certificates do not mean much on your resume. Like, just like, frankly, most people do not care about them. If you are going through a certificate program for the purpose of learning the thing that they teach, great, go build a skill. But if you're going there to play Pokemon and try and catch them all and get as many bullet points on your resume, it's probably a waste of your time. I do know, I've heard people say in India and in some other places that opinion of certificates can be a little bit different. So take that with a grain of salt of where you're based. But my general opinion is don't do certificate programs just for the purpose of getting a piece of paper. NBA finals prediction, Spurs in 4. I'm an architect, BIM coordinator. I plan to learn Python, then CS50 and CS50P and a bunch of other stuff while learning machine learning and linear algebra. Does this seem like a good plan? I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to do. Honestly, I don't know much about some of those classes. I don't know what skills you already have. So I don't know if it's a good plan or not. How has becoming a software engineer changed your life? I mean, it's allowed me to do something that I enjoy every single day and get paid, frankly, what feels like an absurd wage to do it, and has given me a lot of financial freedom that most people don't experience at a young age, I guess. I don't know. Currently learning web development, but I want to switch focus on game dev, but Unreal uses C++ instead of JavaScript. Should I YOLO and just continue master JavaScript and hope web GPU takes off for game development? Just do the things that are interesting to you. If you want to do game development, go learn game development. Don't feel like you have to learn JavaScript if you're not interested in learning JavaScript. Do you think I should change my workflow? Can you tell me how to overcome self-doubt or negative thought? I don't know. I don't know that it's a workflow thing. I think it's just like a thing that comes with time, honestly. Like the more you do things and the more those things become successful, the more you can just logically look at that self-doubt and be like, okay, that's illogical. Clearly the things I'm doing are successful. Therefore, I'm clearly good at these things. And I think that just comes with time. I don't know if I have like a better answer for you. What are things you start to do when you feel imposter syndrome at the workplace? Beyond what I just said, one thing to think about is just the fact that like everybody feels that way. And nobody knows nearly as much as you think they know. And nobody expects you to know nearly as much as you think they expect you to know. And you can also sort of look back at yourself of like a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and think about how much more you know now than you knew then. And sort of recognize that will continue and you'll like continue to know more and more. I don't know if that's a great answer or not, but is it worth coding now? If it's interesting to you, of course. Have you unlocked any brain hacking secrets where you gain dopamine learning how to code instead of stress and anxiety? I want to get my brain to give me the same response to coding as when I play games. I don't know about that. I don't know about any brain hacking. Maybe I need like a Elon Musk Neuralink chip in my brain. Maybe that'll help. But I don't really have like a great answer to your question in like a serious manner, honestly. Should you learn data engineering first or machine learning first if you want to do ML ops or ML in general? Honestly, I don't know that much about machine learning, so I don't know that I'm really qualified to answer that. Finished Coding Dojo Bootcamp in December, and I'm currently job searching. Any tips for getting an entry-level job in the current market? Work on your resume a lot. Make it the best document you've ever made in your life. Get feedback on it from people who are actually going to critique it. So not just feedback from mom or sister or whoever's going to be super nice, like feedback from people in the industry or whoever you know who can give you the best feedback possible and like tell you about the things that are really bad about it. Work on projects, do things to try to stand out, and then study for coding interviews and to some extent play the numbers game, right? Like if you apply to one job, your odds of getting that job is very low. If you apply to 1 million jobs, your odds of getting at least one of them is pretty high, right? So apply somewhere between 1 and 1 million. Is MVC considered to be an architectural pattern or design pattern? I don't want to sound dumb, so I'm not going to answer that question. I'll be honest, that's like in the realm of things that I remember learning about in college and have not thought about one time since. It's probably not a good answer, but is it enough to master Python solely? Do you see it weathering away in the next year? Python's not going to weather away anytime soon. But also, as you learn programming languages, once you know one well, learning more is easy. You don't need to try to like learn as many languages as possible or anything like that. Like once you know how to code, you can learn other languages in a few days. When you worked at AlgoExpert, did everyone work remotely? How was working at a startup different than working in big tech? Yeah, so I think I posted a picture the other day. I literally met people from AlgoExpert for the first time like a week ago. And I've first started working there over 2 years ago. So all of us remote, different parts of the world. How it's different, I would say there's a lot less bureaucracy. Things move a lot faster, and a lot more like breadth of impact. Like when you work at a big company, sometimes it feels like you have such little impact in the grand scope of things. And you're working on these tiny little projects, which like when you actually think about it, this tiny little project is being seen by like 1 billion people. So even if it's like a tiny portion of what those 1 billion people is, maybe that impact is the same as a huge impact in a product that's being seen by like 100,000 people. But it feels much more impactful when you're working on that big thing that 100,000 people see than the small thing that 1 billion people see. Yeah. I don't know what this says. Let's stick to English. Favorite tech software engineering YouTuber? Is it bad to say I don't watch software engineering YouTube at all? Like, I can tell you people who I think make good content. Like, I think Web Dev Simplified makes great content. I think Fireship is great content. I think Tech with Tim is great content. I think Jason Goodison has amazing content. And yeah, but I don't really watch tech YouTube, to be honest. I'm new to Node.js and have been making a REST API for a business using Express module. I'm worried about missing stuff I should include to make a good backend server. What are some good resources? I'm worried about missing stuff I should include to make a good backend server. What are some good resources? Honestly, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for you on that. Is it better to be aware of multiple stacks or just focus on one? Second question, so I guess for that, it kind of depends, but get good at one thing. And then when you need something else for a different project or a different job or whatever, go learn that other thing. But no reason to like try to learn every framework or something. What's the easiest way to work in the US that gives you more freedom? Because I'm not a big fan of visa. I mean, I don't know. I've never been not from the US, right? So I can't really answer that question. Let's not spam the same question 30 times, please. Do you think I can make money coding without going to a university? I mean, it's possible, of course. It's just much, much harder. So I don't want to say it's impossible, but I also don't want to try to sell you a dream that's not a reality. So possible, yes. Is it as easy as going to a university? No. Tips for how to communicate with your manager and a team as a new software engineer, books or courses. I really like the book. It's more about like presentations, but there's a book called Talk Like TED that's about like TED speakers and how they communicate. And I think it does a really good job of articulating how to be a good communicator. And it is an important skill that you have to build. Beyond that, I would say go into meetings prepared. Have an idea of exactly what you want to say. If you feel nervous about those meetings, literally practice them. Like practice saying what it is you want to say. And over time, you'll get better at it and not feel like you need to do that. But in the beginning, that can be a good thing to do. How many years it took you to be a software engineer? I mean, it depends on what you mean as like a starting place, but I had a job when I graduated from college, if that's what you mean. Electrical engineering graduate with a passion for Python and cloud. How can I improve my skill set to compete with CS students? I did a bunch of projects at university. I I mean, it sounds like you've kind of done the things you need to do to compete with computer science students. And at this point, it's just like make sure your resume is as well made as possible and get good at coding interviews. Why is Sam Altman another top, I don't know what that says, of AI saying coding in the future is no longer needed? I don't think I've heard Sam Altman say that, but do you think they want to monopolize AI tech knowledge to stifle future competition, or am I being cringe? I mean, I don't really think that's the goal. I think Sam Altman, Zuckerberg, etc., recognize the importance of, to some degree, democratization of AI. That's why things like Llama are open source. And I think they want to win, right? Like they want to be the companies that profit the most off of it or whatever. But I don't think that necessarily has to be at the detriment of like each other. And as far as like not needing coding, I haven't heard any of them saying that. And I don't think that's going to be the case, at least not for a very long time. Are books like Clean Code and Pragmatic Programmer that focus on best practices and mindsets instead of frameworks, tools, design actually worth investing time into? I haven't read most of those books, but I think they can be good. Why are companies in the US and Europe hiring software engineers remotely? Is it to save money or lack of local talent? Mostly because engineers want to be, well, if you mean remote engineers within the US, it's mostly because engineers want to be remote. If you want to hire top talent, you have to give in to some of the demands of that top talent, and a lot of them want to be at home. If you mean like US companies hiring remote engineers in like India, it's mostly to save money. Can I start a career as DevOps without a strong experience in programming? I don't know much about DevOps. Is it worth it to learn the Elk stack? I know literally nothing about any of those three things, so I don't know. But if it's useful for whatever you're trying to do, then sure. Do you recommend any neural... what? As much as I want to be able to do leak code questions with your eyes closed. I think Elon Musk's got us with the Neuralink, right? How do I get into FANG companies? Get lucky. But besides a lot of luck, make your resume the best resume it's ever been, or the best document you've ever made in your life. Get a lot of feedback on it. Apply to all of them. I think a lot of people who get their first FANG jobs tend to have something there before, whether it be an internship somewhere else, a teaching assistant job, a research assistant job, something else that like sort of vouches for you as like a person who has some level of competence. So I think those hold a lot of weight on resumes, especially for students. And then study a lot for coding interviews. It's the best way to stand out once you get the interview. Best book on learning JavaScript fundamentals in 2024? I don't know. I'm not really a learn to code via book kind of guy. So I don't think I've ever read a JavaScript book. How old are you? 26. Thanks for the Q&A. Of course. Why doesn't Clement upload videos anymore? I miss them. I mean, I don't want to talk for Clement, but what I can say is somebody who's been doing this for far less time than Clement has, it's very easy to sort of get in a cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. And at some point be like, why am I doing this? And also sort of running out of ideas and feeling like you're just making a video to make a video when you've made that video 20 times already. So I would imagine that plays a role in it, and like what's even the purpose type of thing. But I'm not going to speak for Clement. JetBrains or Visual Studio? Does it depend on the language? Both companies have covered all known languages. Does it? I don't know. You mean like which one do I prefer? I've honestly like almost never used JetBrains, so I guess Visual Studio, but use whatever you find yourself more productive in. How do you see your YouTube content changing over the next year? I don't know. Eventually I want to start making less like talking head content and more like bigger projects. I've heard people talk about it as like spectacle content, essentially, like so less me talking at you and more me doing a thing and showcasing that thing, if that makes sense. I just landed my first internship at Motorola. Hey, congrats. Is one internship enough after I graduate? I feel like getting an internship my junior year is late. It's not late, and yes, you have one more internship than the vast majority of people. Which that's kind of an interesting display of the like hedonic treadmill idea. I don't know if that's like exactly the right word for this, but the idea of like the second you achieve a thing, it's like, ooh, is this thing enough? Do I need to achieve another thing? And then when you achieve that other thing, it immediately becomes like, oh, am I behind again? Because there's this other person who has this other thing achieved. But no, you're good. In your opinion, how much has AI affected the coding industry? Very little. It's like, I think to some degree starting to replace Stack Overflow, and I think that's about it at this point. And there's a lot more people who are building AI tools, but just got my MIS degree. Congrats. Where would you recommend I start looking for entry-level jobs? I live in New York. LinkedIn, Indeed, probably the best places. And also like just your network of people you knew from that degree program, whether it be professors or like students who are a little bit older than you, like you can reach out to them for referrals and stuff like that too. Do I need to have strong skills to build a UI using only HTML and CSS, or is it okay to depend on UI libraries? I mean, it depends on like what your ultimate goal is. If you want to be a truly good, well-rounded front-end engineer, I think it's important to know how to do things vanilla. Like not necessarily how to make like the most beautiful designs vanilla, but just like how to implement them. But if that's not your goal, absolutely. Like if you're just trying to build cool stuff, like UI libraries are the way to go. Right? Like I'm not going to ever do anything vanilla, but being good at vanilla development means that I understand how those UI libraries work and I can use them much more carefully. I can use them much more effectively, things like that. Are you a follower of, I have no idea what that is, so no. Why is there such an emphasis on algorithmic design and implementation in software engineering interviews if you hardly apply those skills on the job? There are easier ways to measure general cognitive abilities. Yeah, there are. So the thing with software engineering interviews and why I think it's so upsetting for a lot of people is like, people are like, this is a bad proxy for determining if somebody's good at software engineering. But the reality is software engineering interviews are not meant to be a proxy for determining if somebody is good at software engineering. They're meant to be a proxy for making sure somebody's not bad at software engineering. That's all they care about. They care about making sure they're not hiring anybody bad, because a bad hire is far more expensive than the value of a good hire. So they're meant to be sort of absurdly difficult and to weed out anybody who's potentially bad. Like there are plenty of good developers who are bad at coding interviews, which is unfortunate. But the Googles of the world have enough job applicants who are good at coding interviews that they're okay with missing out on those candidates. It's sort of the unfortunate reality. Although I do think it's changing because of things like LeetCode and AlgoExpert and all of these tools. People are gaming the system. They're getting good at coding interviews, and sometimes when they're not actually good at coding. So I think over time that might change the way they work, but that's kind of the way they were designed. Oh my gosh, that's been muted for like at least a minute or two. How long has that been muted for? I don't even remember pressing the mute button. I was going on these whole rants. Y'all missed some prime content. You blocked me when I said muted? I didn't block anybody. I've literally never blocked somebody. I don't even know how to block somebody. 3 minutes? No way it was 3 minutes. Well, if I'm not going to scroll up to old questions because I don't know what I answered for y'all and what I didn't. So if you had a question that I answered while muted, or that I just haven't answered, just ask it again. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. The mute button is it's not a good user interface from a greetings from your 635th subscriber. I do remember responding to that. That is a long time ago. That's got to be like day 1 or 2. I had such good answers for some of these questions. They were good. We were that's fun. All right. Happens to match. I just finished a semester and had a web dev class. I'm learning Java and C#, but I can't seem to find internships for mainly web dev. How much backend should I know before I could get an internship? I mean, it just depends on like the internship, right? I don't know. I don't have like a specific answer for you. The more things you know, obviously, the better. But like, don't feel like, oh, there's this bar or threshold I have to cross before it's possible to get an internship. I can read lips, so I didn't miss any of the prime information. Hey, love that for you. Who's your greatest mentor? I think it depends on like what aspect of life, right? Like there's like been great mentors in my life regarding my career, but there's also been mentors for YouTube and for social media and like mentors in like life, right? Like, so it kind of depends. Is saying parents a cop-out answer? The GPT question, please? I don't know what the GPT question means. I didn't see it, so. I'm impressed how few viewers we lost while being muted. Maybe I should just always be muted. My question is, when did you feel confident to start applying for jobs in programming? I would say, I don't know. I don't think I felt confident applying for jobs in programming until after I had my first job. Like, I don't think you'll get to a point of confidence. Like, imposter syndrome is real. Just apply. The worst case that happens is they say no, which is the same thing as having not applied. How long will it take to become job-ready software developer? I don't know. It depends on like how much time you're putting in. It depends on where you started from. It depends on what job you're trying to be ready for. It depends on how you're learning. It depends on what type of learner you are, right? Like there's no like one size fits all answer. I'll say this, the fastest I've ever seen somebody go from I've never written a line of code to I have a job as a software engineer is like 6 months. But that is an outlier. Usually it's years. For work as a front end and grow, is it really necessary to have a good grasp of backend? To some extent, yes. Like the idea of like being a front end developer in isolation almost never happens, especially at like startups and things like that. Like you end up doing a little bit of everything, but you don't want to be the developer who realizes that the API you're trying to use that some backend developer made isn't working properly and has to go ask that person to make some 5-line change when you could just go do it yourself. And you also want to be able to intelligently have conversations with the people you're working with to describe what APIs you need and to not only be able to describe those from your own viewpoint, but to be able to understand them from their viewpoint and the trade-offs that they're thinking about. Do you work on personal projects or have any plans to start building apps? I mean, occasionally I'll do like a random project for a YouTube video. And I have some like stuff I'm working on, I guess, but they're not like projects in the sense of like resume projects. Like at this point, it's either like projects for YouTube videos or projects that are like effectively work, like things that I plan to monetize. How and where to learn JavaScript? There's lots of places, right? Like just depends on your own situation. It could be a class at a university if you're a student. It could be a coding bootcamp. It could be online courses. It could be YouTube. It could be textbooks. It just depends on how you learn, what your situation in life is. Yeah, there's not like one place to learn. And if anything, try to find multiple places to learn. I think one of the best ways to learn something is to get information from lots of different places. At what point, how many years of experience did you have before you applied for a job? I mean, I applied for jobs as like a freshman in college. I didn't get any. The first job that I actually got was an internship the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college, other than a teaching assistant job that I had my freshman year. Please launch a course on software development. We'll see. We'll see. How important has math been to your career? Not in the slightest. I used trigonometry the other day. I was pretty proud of myself. I had to have GPT like walk me through the whole thing, but I was proud of myself. But no, you're like almost never use actual math unless you're like, I mean, I'm sure there's people who do, right? Like if you're doing like machine learning or something, but I've never really used it. I really like your videos and the way of your instructing. Thank you. I've been learning React for a while. Hired as an Angular developer, but you got hired as an Angular developer, I think is what that means. What should I do now? I don't know. I don't know if I understand the question. If you're like, you got hired as an Angular developer, but you only know React, then go learn Angular. If you mean like you want to get into a job doing React, do the job you currently have for a while and then start applying elsewhere. I'm not sure I like fully understand the question though. How do you convince people at big tech companies that you work to join your startup? How do you successfully hire software engineers for your startup? That you work in to join your startup. Well, if you work at a big tech company and you're leaving to start a startup, you usually can't convince people to leave to come with you, because usually it's against your contract and you will get a very large lawsuit that will be very expensive. So usually you can't do that. Usually there's some kind of, I forget what they call it, but there's like a clause in your contract that'll be like, no poaching our people for like 2 years. So there's that. But how do you, I mean, I haven't done a lot of hiring, but what I'll say is like, generally speaking, as a person who has been hired, like you want to look at it through our shoes, right? Like you want to look at it in the shoes of the people who have been hired and what made you want to go to a company. It was probably compensation number one. It was probably work-life balance number two, and maybe like the projects you get to work on, things like that after that. And I think getting people to leave big tech to go to a startup, usually the compensation is going to be worse. So usually you have to entice them either through benefits or through potential upside, right? Like the idea of if you buy into this company and you really think it's going to succeed, then eventually you could become like very wealthy from it. I think that's usually how people poach people out of big tech. Do you listen to music while coding? Yeah, I like can't code if it's quiet. It like doesn't work. Software engineer means work for both the stack or mainly one. I mean, it's just like a all-encompassing term, right? Like front end, back end, et cetera, are all kind of encompassed within software engineer. How do you feel about the current market for software engineering job searching? What are ways to stand out, and which niches do you think new programmers should focus since there are many CS branches? I would say focus on just the things that are interesting to you. I hate the idea of like just doing something because this thing is better than that thing, or this thing has slightly better job prospects than that thing. Like just do the thing that you're actually interested in. Do the stuff that you actually want to do. How do I feel about the market? It's worse than it was 3-4 years ago. It's better than it was 6 months ago. But regardless, you can't change it. So I don't think it really matters. Like, I don't think it's worth thinking about too much because the market is the market. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. Ways to stand out. Be unique. I don't know. Have a really good resume, be unique, do things that, do projects that aren't like every person's random tutorial project that they all did. What do you think of Java? It is a programming language. It does exist. All right. How long? I don't know how to see stuff on YouTube streams. How do I see like how long we've been live? I don't know. YouTube is so confusing. I always hated streaming on TikTok because they make you do it from your phone and that's a pain. But it's like equally where you get like extra stuff you can do on YouTube. It's like so much more confusing. I'll probably answer a few more questions and we'll probably call it soon. How do you become a software engineer? Either go get a degree in like computer science, software engineering, informatics, etc., or go to a coding boot camp, or try to self-study and learn software engineering on your own, and then apply to jobs. Big fan of your stuff. I'm actually a YouTuber in the same space. I don't like to flex, but I want to get your attention. Would love to get to know you sometime. Cool. I wish YouTube had a way to like DM people. It's very annoying that there's no way to like if this was TikTok, I'd tell you to DM me, but there's no way to DM me on YouTube. What do you think about Haskell? I mean, I've barely ever used it. I've spent all of 30 seconds of my life writing Haskell, so I don't have many opinions of it. Seems fun. As a front-end developer, is it possible to contribute to open source? Of course. It's not like open source projects don't have front ends. Most advanced project you did as a software engineer? I don't know. I don't know how you define advanced. Are you integrating some AI in your backend development? Not really. No. Been 70 minutes on YouTube? Interesting. I don't know why there's not like a way to see that. Oh, I can see it. I'm a moron. It's been 72 minutes and 3 seconds. Okay, then. Do you ever stream on Twitch? I've never streamed on Twitch. No. I don't know what the point would be. I know some people do it, obviously. But like, I already have this platform. I have the TikTok platform. And it doesn't seem like Twitch is a great place to grow. It seems like a great place to bring your community that already exists. But I'm like, if they already exist, why would I not just do it where they already are? So like, I don't really understand the point of like why I would stream on Twitch. What do you recommend to learn full stack content for free? Go to my like how I would learn web development or like full stack development YouTube video and go to the pinned comment, and there's like literally like 100 resources and almost all of them are free. Did you consider doing a master's in computer science? I've thought about it. I think I might do it eventually. But at the moment, like there's nothing I want to do that getting that master's degree is going to unlock. So until that happens, I'm not going to do it. But I think eventually I might want to go teach at a university or something, in which case I would probably need to do that. Where did you learn most of your CS knowledge? University. Classes. School do be teaching. Thank you for your useful videos. I wondered what you think of WASP. Is it bad that I don't know what that stands for? WASP programming. What does that stand for? WASP lang.dev. Develop full stack web apps faster. Yeah, I've never used this, so I have no idea what I think of it. How to learn low-level dev and game dev in 2024? I don't have like a specific 2024 or low-level / game dev answer for you, so I don't know. Could you see yourself returning to Meta? Maybe one day. It was chill. I liked it there. Between cybersecurity and AI, what would you choose to specialize in a master's degree and why? What do you think will be most important in the future? I would specialize in whatever's interesting to you. If we all just specialized in whatever's like this like global maxima of value, we would all have the exact same degree. We'd all be the same person. It'd be boring. And almost all of us would be unhappy. Just do the things that are interesting to you. How you got the job in Meta and the process to arrive there? I was an intern first. So I applied to an internship through a career fair at my university. And then I went through coding interviews, passed coding interviews, and got a job. And then got a full-time job after the internship. I wasn't here earlier, but where did you study and how far did you go? I have a bachelor's degree in informatics from the University of Washington. All right. I think I'm going to end it there. This has been fun. Appreciate y'all chatting and whatnot. If you are new here, subscribe, follow the channel. There'll be a new video out in the morning at 6:30 tomorrow. So yeah, watch that. Maybe I'll do more of these lives. It's kind of fun. I do them on TikTok a lot. Maybe I'll do them like at the same time on both, but I feel like it'd be hard to read both chats at once, but maybe I'll try doing that. Anyways, appreciate y'all. Have a good rest of your night, morning, whatever time it is for you.